All right, my lovelies, here we go. And so I am brought to you today by the inspiration of Chinese New Year, the year of the dog. I have always loved the Asian cultures. Always. And I remember having a little vase in my room for a long time when I was younger, and I didn't really know differences between the cultures, but as I grew older, I continued that real draw between the fabrics and the artistry and the architecture, the gardens, all of it. There's such this beautiful simplicity that also is detailed. It's this really great balance. And so when I was asked to talk about this, I was trying to understand as to why. And I do think it has a lot to do with balance and honoring. When I was younger, I would always watch Bruce Lee, and then Chuck Norris, and samurais, and while I haven't really watched a lot of the current traditionally Asian movies, with the martial arts and the beautiful graphics of the flying through the air and all that sort of stuff, with the CGI and whatnot. It's even that is just this gorgeous balance of honor, simplicity, and complexity. It's just fantastic. And I think the reason that this is coming up is because in my observation and what I'm being told, there's so little honor anymore in really sticking to something and developing it, whether that's a talent, a skill, or a relationship. And I am coming to understand that is part of what the internet imbalance has created for our culture right now. We are so familiar with getting things as quick as we need them. Someone emails you, it's like this urgency to email them back, regardless of what you're doing, right? The phone is like a third lung. It's like a third lung, right? And so when you leave it somewhere, and even if, like, for myself, I go on my walks and I really have to stop and say, wait, do I really need my phone? If I'm not expecting a call, I don't need my phone. Because whatever is waiting for me when I get home, I can deal with. And so that's the kind of balance that I think is being asked for all of us to really start engaging. And so we're not quite so reliant on external information as much as internal information, right? So when you take time to develop something, say your intuition or your instincts, which does take time, the more you use it, the stronger that muscle becomes. It's just like any other muscle. So the balance of the constant influx of technology, and now it's quicker, and now it's this, and now it's that, and hurry up and go run out and get the new thing. It's crazy making. And so when do we bring back, and how do we bring back simplicity, beauty, honor, and trust? At some point, it has to become conscious, right? We have to make a determination to do that. So, just 25 different things that are going through my brain that I'm speaking and listening at the same time. It's a whole nother muscle. Speaking of which, your challenge. As I hear it, the challenge is, what are you doing to either encourage or discourage your intuition from being built? In my industry, you know, people outside of my industry, being healing and energy work and intuition, psychic stuff. Although, if I didn't have this as a career, I would still be using this because it's just part of who I am. However, when people are really wanting some sense of engagement in their life, control, that sort of thing, listening to your intuition is going to be one of the first things that needs to happen. Because when you become reliant on getting your information from someone else or something else or outside of yourself, at what point do you trust your own thoughts and your own decisions? And do you? Or do you just keep discounting them because you don't really have any history of listening and having an appropriate outcome? And so if you keep listening to other people, it's a lot easier to blame, right? It's a lot easier to blame those answers and the outcome because you didn't necessarily have to do it yourself. You were allowing yourself to put the trust in someone else. So if the outcome didn't come out the same that you thought it would, well then, you know, you could blame them. No. First of all, we don't blame. Blaming is not part of what we need to do at all, ever. Secondly, being able to rely on yourself, which is, I think, part of what I really appreciate about the culture. They have this really beautiful balance between self actualizations and relying on community. It feels like there's a better general balance, or at least where it came from. There's an understanding for how much you have to rely on yourself and how much you have to rely on other people. And it just feels like that needs to come back. We need to be more self-reliant. And so and how does that present itself in the modern day? So a couple ways. One is there's this requirement to listen to, sometimes you have these voices, right? I know that can go a little crazy. Let me explain what I'm talking about. When my kids were growing up, one of the things that I would always remind them is, especially if they're going someplace new, but all the time, I would say, keep your spidey senses on. Turn on your spidey senses, okay? Which was an indication to them that what's being asked of them is their awareness field goes beyond just the body, and it goes into this mass expansion, okay? So they can tell if a car is out of control behind them, or they hear footprints that make them feel uncomfortable, or someone's coming towards them that it doesn't feel right, or it feels happy, or whatever. It doesn't always have to be looking for danger. That's not the point. The point is keep your spidey senses up, because it'll be easier for you to respond. And that's one of the things about martial arts that I always loved, was the ability to be prepared enough in strength and ability, however, to also be able to incorporate flow, movement, and blocking and bringing in and all that sort of stuff. Love, 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 love. Love. It was all about energy. Love it. And so while I didn't study martial arts myself, I studied dance. I also studied Asian methodologies of healing. And it just, love it. Love it. Love it. So, I think that what I'm hearing as far as your challenge for this particular day 17 is to pay attention to what do you discount as far as an instinct message, and what are you willing to hear. And it may be that for certain subjects you're willing to listen, and for certain subjects you're more wanting to ignore. That would be interesting to find out, because there would be a reason why you would need to do that, right? The other question is, if you catch yourself saying things like, it's kind of, I get this all the time in conversation when I'm working with people. It's kind of weird, this happened and then that happened, and I kind of thought that was going to be the outcome. That was kind of weird, right? That was so weird. Or, it's kind of, it's interesting, but I don't know, it probably doesn't mean anything. It probably does. And it's probably asking you to gain some confidence in your intuition skills. That's what it's asking. So, if you're in a car and you're heading down a road, maybe you know the road very well, and it's a great opportunity for instinct to come in and say, hey, you know what, I know you're used to going this way, why don't you go ahead and turn right on this street? Why not? Why not? And you may hear yourself saying, oh, that doesn't make sense, why would I do that? That's just silly, right? So the exercise then would be to go ahead and follow that. And if for nothing else, because you are building a relationship with your intuition. And keep your spidey senses open while you're doing that, so you have an awareness. You may never have an answer as to why you were directed in another way. You may get it right away. You may get it sometime thereafter. It's really regardless, okay? The point is, if you're being directed to do something, not harming anybody else, obviously those are not part of this. Start building that muscle without having to know why. And that's where we get stuck. Well, why do I have to do that? Sometimes you don't have to know why, right? Sometimes you don't. And we get stuck because we get used to saying, when we were kids, to our parents, well, why? Well, why? Well, why? Well, why? Some kids are just that way. And if you didn't really get a good answer, or an open-ended answer, then you're going to have a habit of asking why, or you're going to ignore it because it doesn't make sense, right? So how we follow our instinct and intuition is very much in line with how we were raised. And so maybe we need to shift that muscle, right? Shift the muscle work, the workout, the exercise. I am sure that you have all witnessed, I certainly have, and I just want to shake a parent. Maybe write a song called Shake a Parent. Shake an adult. In a public arena, and the child is attempting to get the adult's attention with, repetitive and getting louder and louder and louder. And the adult, parent, whatever, will ignore and ignore and ignore and ignore and ignore without making the decision to say, stop, wait a minute, wait your turn, or whoever they're addressing, ask them to stop so that you can address what's going on. The allowance of ignoring is insane, but it is an example of what we can do to our intuition as well, right? So our intuition is a relationship of give and take, trust, and communication. So if you were to say to somebody, well, it would be great if we could go and do this, just because it just kind of feels right, and that person says to you, no, that's stupid. Or you're being silly. Tell me why. Why does that make sense? Or just sheer ignoring of the question, it wouldn't make you feel so good, right? So intuition is that kind of relationship. And we'll go into some of the time, maybe the gradient, right? With the gradient of daily intuition versus schizophrenia, because it's not so far apart from each other. However, they are really far apart from each other. So we have to, we're talking about kind of the lighter note of intuition and dialogue here, okay? So, yeah, so pay attention. See, as you're challenged, see what it is that you ignore. Is it in this particular subject matter that you just cannot allow yourself to follow your instincts? Because somebody else's authority is overpowering, and you just haven't allowed yourself to do that. Or can you allow yourself a balance of sometimes, instead of being straight in the, behind the wheel, and you have this directive in front of you and you just have to get there and then do your work, and can you turn right instead of going straight and pick it up in another place? Maybe there's something in that path that you need to stop and ignore and enjoy, or the path that you're going ahead that, whatever. There's so many spiritual different reasons as to why you could get that kind of directive. The question is, can you allow yourself that balance? So, can you allow yourself the balance of turning off your phone at night, not having it near your brain? Or do you have to have it on? And if you have to have it on, put it near another room or near the bedroom door and have it on loud if it's your alarm. That way you actually have to get up and get to it. So, what's the balance of turning on, turning off this kind of bombardment? It's necessary, which is why trips to the nature, trips to the beach, or trips to the desert, or whatever kind of replenishes you, right? But if you don't have that accumulation, you don't need as much replenishment. Does that make sense? That's balance. That's balance. So, I'm going to enjoy my celebration of the Chinese New Year and the reverence for that culture, all those cultures. And so let's see what the instinct muscle was going to have you do, and enjoy the process, right? Oh, I did want to say, I appreciate you contacting. Some of you were contacting me outside of the comment section in the videos, and I will put those questions together and start formulating some responses. And I appreciate you listening. I hope you are constantly empowered every day, more and more, enjoying the empowerment. There isn't like a cup full. You don't have to like fill a cup and then you're done, or fill a bucket and then you're done. It's constant. And the more you fill, the gentler life is going to flow. And your preparedness for incidentals, discomforts are going to be a little bit easier. Okay? So be well, and I'll speak with you soon.